It's not only students that we need to train how to use these tools, right? Nobody knows how to use these tools. It's teachers as well. Teachers are bright, but they got 100,000 things on their plate, and they need tools that help them reduce their burden, not add to.
Welcome to the BJU Press Teacher Edition podcast, where Christian educators are encouraged and inspired as we bring you interviews, practical ideas, strategies, and answer your questions about teaching in today's culture. And here's your host, Jenny Copeland.
Generative AI. Perhaps you've heard of it, maybe? It seems that AI, which really has actually been around for years, is making itself quite the personality in education, well, actually in life these days. Well, we literally could go for months covering AI in every episode here on the Teacher Edition podcast. Today, we're going to focus our AI discussion and leave you with some things to think about and a resource to explore. But just before we introduce today's guests, let me welcome you, our listeners. School is underway, and I hope that you are settling into your routine and getting great opportunities to come alongside your students. As that newness wears off and you really get those opportunities to connect with them and really get to know them and minister to them. We look forward to bringing you another school year of practical, uplifting episodes here on the Teacher Edition podcast. If you're new to the podcast, be sure to check out our episode library with over 2 years of in the trenches practical episodes. Of course, let me invite each of you to take a minute to subscribe to the podcast. If you have friends who aren't listening in, please share this podcast with them as well. Don't forget to follow us on social media. We are Teacher Edition Podcast on Facebook and on YouTube also, by the way. And you can also find us on Instagram and TikTok as Teacher Edition Pod. That's Teacher Edition Pod. We would love it also if you would take a minute and leave a review on Apple Podcasts. I know that's something that you have to stop and intentionally take time to do, but leaving a review really helps others find the show as well. So if you would, please do take a minute. If you're enjoying this Teacher Edition podcast, let us know. And lastly, we are looking for your questions. I want to invite you to go to our website, teachereditionpodcast.com. There you can subscribe to our emails. You can also submit your questions. It really is just a simple click of a button. You record your question. That's all you have to do. For all of our listeners, be sure to listen all the way to the end of each episode, because if we do have a question to share, we're going to do it there at the end of the episode, and you will not want to miss out on that. Okay, so let's drill down on the topic of AI. As I mentioned, there is no way to do AI justice in one episode, and we'll have more coming your way as this topic just becomes such a neon light in education. But today, I want to introduce to you two guests who really have a heart for Christian education, and more specifically, they have a heart for technology to be used effectively and appropriately in Christian education. First, Dr. Derek Wilson. Derek is a seasoned educational leader with a passion for harnessing the power of emerging technologies to really improve student learning as well as teacher support. As a senior leader, he's actually the director of innovation and technology at TrekAI. He plays a pivotal role in really shaping how artificial intelligence can be thoughtfully integrated, and thoughtfully being the key there, because right now we're not seeing a lot of thoughtfully sometimes in AI, but being thoughtfully integrated into K-12 education. He has over 2 decades of experience as a teacher and an academic leader in Christian schools. And I really appreciate that in his role, because he brings insights to the table that really help his work be a great fit for educators in the classroom. At TrekAI, his work centers on building the tools that are going to best support the classroom. Our second guest is Dr. Josh Thomason. Josh serves as the Vice President of Finance and Operations at Greater Atlanta Christian School. He's the founder and executive director of Ethos, the school's global online school. And believe it or not, they partner with more than 70 schools across 6 continents to expand access to high-quality Christian-centered education. And I love that. Josh is also the visionary behind TrekAI, and his work there really reflects his passion, I guess I could put it that way, to just align technology. And again, another keyword, align technology with a purpose, and making it personal, meaningful, and Christ-centered. I met both Derek and Josh through their work with TrekAI, and maybe you're wondering what on earth that is. I keep saying TrekAI. Well, TrekAI is an AI-based tutor and just a suite of teacher tools that was created to help reduce the administrative work that educators have. And as Josh and Derek say, it's to restore what matters most, that human connection in the classroom. TrekAI supports Christian schools by offloading some of those time-consuming, repetitive tasks that we all have to do, like grading and lesson planning and administrative logistics. And in doing that, it helps to give teachers back some of that time where they can focus on mentoring and really getting to know their students. So TrekAI launched in 2023, and it has already expanded to over 150 schools, and I know that's growing by the day, and over 100,000 students worldwide. So I know we're going to talk a little bit more about that, of course, later on. But recently, just so you, our listeners, know, BJU Press partnered with TrekAI, and we partnered our materials with their platform, meaning that as teachers are creating resources or students are reviewing using TrekAI, they are actually doing that, pulling from BJU Press materials and content as the foundation for that. So anyway, I know we're going to talk more about TrekAI, so I don't want to get sidetracked. But Josh, Derek, it is such a privilege to have you on the show today. Welcome to the Teacher Edition podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having us, Cindy. Really happy to be here.
Yeah, really excited to talk about AI and education and all just the amazing things that are happening right now.
Great. Okay, so I know that TrekAI is kind of the shiny object in the room right now, but let's back up just a little bit. I really want our listeners to hear your story, to hear the heart behind the tool and kind of get to know you both a little bit. So if you would, share with us the story of how you all even got into the AI space.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So, yeah, our journey really does begin around 2017, 2016. And it was in GAC's pursuit of online courses. And so back then, we had a number of students who were looking for hybrid platforms. They wanted to be able to come for a face-to-face experience for part of the day and then go do tennis or golf or you name it in the afternoons or some ballet. We also had a number of students who wanted to take courses that we just didn't have enough students to offer on our brick and mortars. They maybe AP European history or some type of dual credit course that they wanted to take that we just did not have enough students to be able to offer. And so we began to look at online platforms and ultimately decided that we wanted to create our own. And so we believe that the same reason that we had issues being able to offer those courses, many other Christian schools would as well. And so we launched it as a partnership of Christian schools. And so Ethos, as you've already alluded, we started with 5 partner schools and 36 students with, I think, about 5 courses back in 2017. And to your point today, we're already well over 70 partner schools, over 1,000 enrollments on 6 continents. And so really, though, what happened whenever we launched it is we launched it with, if you just kind of think about it, we launched it with this concept of personalization in mind, personalization in learning. And for us, what that meant then was students be able to take courses they couldn't take in a normal context. But pretty quickly, our eyes kind of became opened to other ways to think about student personalization, just-in-time tutoring, things along those lines. And I like to reference Dr. Arthur Levine. Arthur Levine was the president of Teachers College at Columbia University. And he made this comment. He said, "Our social institutions mirror the economic paradigms in which we live." And I sit here and I think about, what does that really mean? And what he's saying is, I'm not smart enough to understand a lot of this, Jenny, so I like to think about it in the context of retail. Because believe it or not, before coming into Christian education, I worked at Home Depot corporate. And so retail's in my bones a little bit. And so I live in downtown Norcross, Georgia. And Norcross is an 1880s rail town. And in 1880, if I wanted to go buy a new suit in the agrarian economy, I'd walk down the street to Joe's General Store. Joe knew me. He knew what size I wore, knew what color I liked, knew I had 3 kids. He even knew I missed church on Sunday. We won't tell anybody, right? But he knew that. But the problem is the minute I placed that order, he knew it was going to be 2 weeks to get it, right? Because the general store was highly personal, but not scalable. In the same way, education, if you had means in the agrarian economy, you were educated by a private tutor. A private tutor knew you, strengths, weaknesses, all those things about you. But you couldn't scale a private tutor. And so as you move into the information age, and I want to go, or not the information age, but the industrial age, and I want to apologize for those from Arkansas on the front end. In retail, you got the big box, All right, in the big box, I don't know the last time you went to Walmart. Walmart certainly solved the scale question, but it came at a cost. All of a sudden, Joe, you don't know Joe, right? Joe doesn't work at Walmart anymore. And maybe there is a Joe at Walmart, but I don't know
Probably.
and so it came at a cost, and that cost was personalization, right? And in education, the same thing happened. We got the industrial model of learning that we have today. Now, I'm thankful for the industrial model of learning because if not for that, I would have dropped out of school in 6th grade like my granddaddy did and gone and worked on the farm. Right. So certainly positive things that come from the industrial model of learning, but it came at a cost. And now we're not 1-to-1 with the private tutor. Now we're 20, 30-to-1 with that teacher. And so if what Levine says is true, and our social institutions mirror the economic paradigms in which we live, as we transition into the AI-based information age, we should expect changes to emerge in that in the way that our social institutions manifest. And so we began really in about 2020 to try to understand what does that mean. And what we realized was it really is talking about how do you provide that personalized tutor experience at scale. And what we pretty quickly realized is the only way you're able to accomplish that is through AI and machine learning. And you think about a retail, we got that personalization at scale through Amazon. And that model has not been created yet in education. And so in 2020, we began to explore AI-based tools and how we could use AI-based tools to further our experience. Now, don't misread. In no way am I suggesting that teachers go away. Learning is a social experience, and it always will be.
Glad you clarified.
I don't
might
care
have had
what
a fight on our hands.
My wife is very happy about this. She's an educator.
We got that out of the way.
I don't care what Bill Gates says, right? Learning is a social experience, and educators in Christian education know this better than anyone. They understand that education is not about knowledge transfer. Education is about student formation.
Right.
And so what we believe is that AI-based tools can actually help teachers, as you alluded to earlier, reclaim time for student formation. And so we began to explore in 2020, how do we build those tools that allow us to do that? Back then, we could barely spell AI. But we began building a data lake and a number of things like that. And then that way in 2023 and 2022, when ChatGPT came out, and Derek can talk a little bit more about this, we were able to pivot pretty quickly and leverage large language models and generative AI, taking advantage of their strengths, but mitigating their weaknesses with some core ways. And we'll talk more. We can talk more here in a minute about how we've done that within the large language model space.
Absolutely.
But also how we think about how we see the AI world in general emerging over time, and how we see it possibly even moving beyond generative AI into a new future. And how we're leaning into that as well. So that's our story. That's kind of our background. And really, to your point, wanting to see how we can partner and serve Christian schools in a way that that allows these tools to be redeemed for Christian perspective and really serving those schools themselves.
Yeah. Which makes you very unique, because I'm not hearing that from too many of these platforms. Okay, so it is no secret that while so many are, I guess you could say, enamored with what large language models can do, there are pitfalls, there are weaknesses, there's limited historical and cultural context. Of course, the MIT study, which I'm sure you guys are familiar with from a few months back that just came out, it really highlights the impact on student thinking and growth, as they use these types of tools. We know that critical thinking among students is really struggling these days. So here you are adding to the statistics. Well, I know, actually far from it. So I want you to talk with us about the contrast to the other platforms, because easily people can say, oh, another AI platform. But what is the contrast to the other platforms that we hear about and we see? So like how the design of Trek works and how it could mitigate some of these issues that I just mentioned and others that we're seeing.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question. And I think it's a question that we as educators should be asking, right? I often talk to schools about how we engaged with phones into the classroom. And I think a lot of us as educators, we regret our decisions, right? We said, hey, we didn't handle that one right. How do we make sure we don't do it again, right? And I think a lot of the studies that you're referencing, the MIT, your brain on ChatGPT, it's a great title, right? But it exactly highlights some of the dangers that we see with using a large language model like ChatGPT out of the box, right? The other kind of things that we're also seeing in the research right now is ChatGPT, Claude, not to pick on ChatGPT.
Sure, right. It represents many, yeah.
Right, exactly. But the they have this ability to rabbit hole people in the same way that social media did to students. There's this technical term called sycophancy that large language models are really guilty of, which is whatever you say is the best idea. They're the ultimate improv, right? It's all yes and they're not requiring students to think or right. And so there's these dangers there. And so we're educators, and like Josh has mentioned, that we deeply believe education is a formational event. And so we have to ask, what are the kinds of students that we're forming in that educational process? And so what we've done with Trek is we have trained the model to be Socratic in nature, so that when Trek engages with the student, it's requiring the student to actually pause and think. That it's not just this knowledge transfer. I always say, we
So
don't
old
want,
school.
yeah, right. We don't want an answer machine, right? We don't want
Thank you.
that.
Yes.
We want an educational event to occur for students.
Right.
So when a student comes in and asks a question, Trek 9 times out of 10 is going to come back with a question back to the student, just like a good teacher, right? Where even Trek, when a student comes in and says, "Hey, will you write my paper on the Great Gatsby for me today?" Trek, just like a good teacher, will be like, "No, I'm not writing that for you, but can I help you outline it, or can we talk about your thesis statement, and can we work on it?" And honestly, that kind of dynamic, the research is showing more and more is that ChatGPT, large language model, out of the box, is actually detrimental. But if you can craft the model to act like an educator, act with best educational practices, actually enhances the learning. And that MIT study, all the buzz got around, ChatGPT in your brain. But if you read down, they actually did a second study with it. And it was students learning with a large language model prompted to act like an educator. And you saw equal, if not better, outcomes for the students.
Right.
And so I think good teaching is still good teaching, and we don't need to throw that out of the box,
Absolutely.
right? And so with Trek, what we do is we've trained it to avoid a lot of those pitfalls. For example, the everything is a good idea that large language models often do. We actually train Trek to not trust the student because the student is learning and it's growing. And so Trek comes at the student and says, "Hey, I'm going to help you learn," just like a good teacher would. And so my go-to is when I'm reading Trek chats and we're, kind of leaning on the weights and fine tuning it more, I'm constantly asking would I respond as an educator the way Trek responded? Right. And that's the goal, is we want students to actually learn. And so we've built these guardrails inside of Trek. We often use the example, a lot of education right now is just throwing students out onto ChatGPT. And that's not ideal. We talk a lot about learning to drive, right? That when I was learning to drive, my dad took me into a parking lot. There's no cars around, and we slowly worked into it. Right. Well, you don't take a student out to an interstate. I'm looking out, at I-85 in Atlanta, Georgia right now. You
Yeah,
don't
great
throw a student out.
example.
Right. You
That's right.
don't. Right.
I have a
You
very
want
distinct
to
picture in my mind.
help them along the way.
Right.
And so that's what we need to be doing, is how do we actually train students to use these tools for what they are, which is tools. And I think especially those of us in Christian education are really, equipped to ask that question, because we believe education is formational, that we're forming students. And so who are we forming and how are we forming them?
Yeah, and Derek, I would actually add just briefly to that. It's not only students that we need to train how to use these tools. Right? Nobody knows how to use these tools. It's teachers as
Yes.
well.
Yes.
Teachers are bright, but they got 100,000 things on their plate, and
100%.
learning how to prompt is not necessarily the most optimal. They need tools that help them reduce their burden, not add to.
Yeah. Yeah. I was with some educators recently. I did some AI sessions with them, and we were talking about how really I feel like education kind of got, cut off at the knees. We got caught off, from behind by AI. And so what did all the educators do? We flew into defensive mode. So all that so many educators know about with AI is we're trying to fight it because, the students are cheating with it. I need to ban it in my school. And it instantly got that negative connotation. We didn't really get a chance to learn about how it could be used the right way and how we could use it to help us, because instantly we were thrown into, being caught off guard by it. So speaking of teachers, I want to jump into that, because teachers do spend a lot of time creating and customizing for their classroom, whether it's, practice activities, review quizzes, games, correspondence, whatever. they're looking for ways to get everything done. And I happen to know that TrekAI has a very nice selection of teacher tools. Now, some teachers are starting to kind of dabble in that and realize, ooh, this could help me appropriately with some of my workload. And I wondered if you guys could speak to some of those more popular teacher tools and how are you seeing them implemented in the classroom and helping teachers reclaim that time?
So we have a wide suite of teacher tools, everything from, a rubric generator to
Wait, but
a
everybody loves making rubrics. Why would you want to use that? Come on, guys.
Rubrics are the bane of my existence.
Yeah, you and most educators, I think.
Right.
It's a necessary
Well,
evil.
right. And like the ability to just like not have to think, or at least not think. We always say 80% AI, 20% teacher, right? That I can get the outline, and then me as a teacher, I now engage and I find tweak it there. But so we have everything: rubric generator, lesson plan generator, all of these. I think one of my favorite kind of like ways I've seen. I love project-based learning. But as
Yes.
an educator, project-based learning is difficult to get off the ground. Right?
Sure.
I need a good idea. And then after that good idea, I need to actually map it out and plan it out. And then after that, I need a rubric. I have to write something to grade. And then I have to show my students. And so one of the flows that we often see is we have a project-based learning generator that will write out the project base, give you ideas. And you're like, okay, love this idea. And then it'll write a lesson plan for you. And so it'll map out 2-week time, and you could chat with it and be like, oh, I don't have 2 weeks. I need to fit this into 1 week, and it'll adjust it all for you. And they're great. Now make a rubric. And then you could do this rubric. And then after you have this rubric, I love it. We just launched this summer the ability to make slideshows. So a PowerPoint generation. And so I could take this rubric and it'll make a PowerPoint introducing my whole project to my students. I don't have to do anything. And I could go in and manipulate it with images and everything. And then the part that I love about Trek is I think the power is when we can get teachers and students in the same system. And that when they're in the system, it provides a lot, right? It provides the guardrails that we were just talking about, right? Me as a teacher, I could see their chats. If a student expresses something, negative, self-harm, violence, then an administrator can get an email with Trek. But what I can then do is I can assign that rubric to my class and use our brainstorm feature where students can log in. And now as they're brainstorming ideas for that project, Trek knows what the teacher wants, knows the final state outcome, and acts as this coach. And those are the things that like really get me excited.
Oh,
right?
yeah, that's gold. Yeah.
Right. The
Yeah, I
first
can
time
tell
we
you're a
watched
little
this,
excited.
I love it. Like
Makes you
I
want to go
like it
back in the
because
classroom. I know, that's how I feel.
I do too. Right. But like one of the really neat things that we launched this proof your paper, a rubric, right? And so what a teacher did, and I think this is a great example of how AI can support educators, is she's a 9th grade English teacher. And so she assigned, they work on thesis statements all year. She has, her 5 requirements of a good thesis statement. So she loads that into Trek and then gives it to her class. And now those students, every time she requires all of her students to submit their thesis statement to Trek, and Trek will prompt them on it. And the first day she did this, she rolled it out to her class and said, all right, everybody put your thesis statement in Trek. Trek now knows what the teacher is specifically looking for her thesis statements. And it's chatting with the students. And she says, she goes, it was amazing. She said, normally in that class period, I would spend 2 minutes with each of my 25 kids, right? And they're not getting, she's doing the best she can. She's got 25 kids. She's got 45 minutes doing the best she can. But she said, instead, what I did was because I had Trek, I got to use Trek almost as like a teaching assistant. And I got to spend 10 minutes with 3 kids that I knew really needed my one-on-one attention. And the other kids still got the help. But she stopped me.
They all
after
got
class.
help. Yes.
Exactly. She said, I love this. And it stuck with me. And she said at the end, she stopped me. She goes, that thing, that Trek, right? The thing did for all my kids what I wish I could do for all my kids.
Right.
And I think that's like the beauty of AI in education is that we could do for all our students what we wish we could do for all our students.
Right.
But we don't have the time or the margin.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we talked about teachers. Now, what about students? So I've heard rumor that they might be using AI or something. I don't know. Okay, so
No,
Trek.
never.
No, okay,
I
I was
think our
wrong.
students have
Well,
figured out how to spell it, right, Jenny?
Right,
that's.
that's it.
Are we there yet?
Yeah.
Okay, so Trek AI has a student side. Talk with us about what you're seeing with Trek AI as it relates to the students. Like, how are they using it? What about impacts? Are you to the point where you're seeing outcomes yet and impact there? Can you speak to any of that?
Yeah, no, that's another great question, Jenny. And I think the number one usage will not what doesn't shock us, right? And it's actually when we launched Trek AI, we launched it primarily as a student-facing tutor, and then came behind and began building the teacher tools behind it. So our number one
Interesting.
focus has been students from the beginning.
Right.
And what we found is that it's not surprising. The number one usage is in the evenings when students are doing homework, when they're studying. And here's when we sit back and we think about it. We look at some of the tools out there. And you alluded to this earlier. What generative AI did to education was it sent the whole system, the whole ecosystem into chaos. And what we've been trying to do through this is bring order back to chaos. And a lot of the way a lot of institutions do that is they try to build walls. And you talked about those walls earlier. But through that, what happens is a lot of tools build what I would call gatekeepers, right? And teachers have to set up the chat for the student, or they have to prompt it specifically for students to use. And our view is that whenever that happens, it makes the teacher feel like they're more in control. But there's two things that happen that are detrimental to learning. One is it's not available when I need it. Right. As a student, I need help when I need it. I don't need to wait 2, 3. I don't need the latency of 2, 3, 4 days later. I need it now. And the other thing is that when you limit the authenticity of the chats, it limits the insights that are provided back to the teacher in terms of how students are using this. And I don't recall if Derek alluded to this a moment ago, but one of the core ways teachers use it is because we have the chats of students. Teachers are able to see those chats and be better able to understand how what students are struggling with. We have an AB calculus teacher here on GAC's campus who he said this. He's been teaching AB calculus for 20 years. His AP pass rate's 90+%. And he said, I assign Trek for homework every night. And we said, why? He said, because I realized over 20 years my students have been lying to me. They tell me they understand these things. And when I see their chats, I realize they don't. And what it does two things. It helps me understand which students need the most help. And not only that, what do they need help with, right? The other area that we see it used commonly is when you're studying for exams, particularly finals. We actually had a student back this past fall, or spring, excuse me, that reached. So one of the things that we have on the back end is we have a chat limit. In our chats, students can chat or teachers can chat without limitation. However, abuse spots, things like that, we have a limit just to make sure it's not abused. And this particular student reached out to us and said, why did you guys shut down my Trek? And we're like, what do you mean? We didn't shut down your Trek. And we went on the back end and realized this student had hit their chat limit for that single day. And what we asked, we said, what have you been doing? And what they had been doing is they had loaded their study guide and their notes in, and they were having Trek quiz them for their upcoming final.
That is
and
fantastic.
they had been going back and forth for 4 or 5 hours doing that, and they hit their chat limit. And so to the point, ultimately, what matters to us is this improvement student learning, right? And what we found is so hard to control for everything, but what we did was we looked at students first semester to second semester within the same course with the same teacher, and we wanted to understand if Trek was having an impact if they saw grade decline. So if they were going from an 85 down to a C, could Trek impact that decline? And what we found was that for students who used Trek, there was a 15% reduction in that grade decline relative to students who didn't,
Wow.
which in education, 15% is huge.
Yeah, that's significant.
And when we looked at it in the context of our grade distribution, not only did we see a 15% reduction in the numeric average, we also saw a 25% improvement in A's and B's because of the way our grades were distributed, right? And another just a couple of points to look at, right? When we look at chat usage by day on GAC's campus, and GAC has over 1,800 students, what we see is that in the month of December, our chat usage more than doubles as we head into finals. And we asked students, why is that? Why are you using Trek? And there are a couple of points that I'd make here is that, first of all, GAC does not restrict usage of ChatGPT or other large language models on our campus. Students can go to them and use them. Now, they're going to be held accountable if they use them inappropriately, but they can use them. We don't restrict that usage on campus. But Trek is used 7 times more than the highest used generic LLM. And we ask
interesting.
our students, why? Why are you using Trek relative to ChatGPT? And they give us 2 reasons. The first is they say because it's highly contextualized to what I'm doing. It doesn't give me nonsense answers, right? It doesn't give me long, verbose answers that I just don't understand or don't know what to do with. The other thing that they say is because it's, and as educators, you'll love this, they said because it's trained to work like a teacher and not just give me answers, it helps me learn.
Good for them.
Right. Yeah. They could be lying to us. I don't know. But I think that I tend to think
Made a good
I tend to think
interview.
they're telling the truth.
No, that's awesome.
Yeah. So
That's great. Okay, so we've looked high level at the functions and I guess the features, but we haven't dug much into something else that you have mentioned, and that is that TrekAI is built with a Christian perspective. That is so unique to that, like to even say it, like how many others are out there like that? Talk with us about that. What does that really mean? I mean, can't you just pull up ChatGPT or Gemini or whatever platform you choose and just request an answer with a biblical worldview? I mean, isn't that good enough? What does that actually mean for TrekAI, and how does it work, I guess, specifically for Christian schools? Because we talked about that a lot. How do you see it serving them best?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have been able to really customize Trek for our Christian school partners. And what that allows them to do is to have a Trek experience that is inside of that biblical worldview for those students and for those teachers as well. And so for our Christian schools, we built out tools that insert biblical worldview into lesson plans, right? Or talk about how I don't know about y'all, but we have worked hard at GAC, but to incorporate biblical worldview into all of our lesson plans. That's really tough if you're teaching calculus, right? Or stoichiometry, right? Those are difficult things. And so Trek can act like an assistant for those teachers that are looking to do that. So we have a tool called spiritual responsiveness that's available to our Christian school partners. And so that's in there, and it works in that biblical worldview of, hey, I'm teaching about, parabolas. How can I incorporate a biblical worldview into that? And it's going to act like a chat partner coach for them. The other thing that I love is that for our Christian school partners, when a student asks a question about, I saw it the other day, students go to these, to Trek to ask for school help learning, but you're seeing it also where they ask about life advice, like,
Yeah,
hey,
becoming their counselor.
exactly. And it comes to them. I saw one, it was a student, and they had asked, I don't really like the decisions my friend group's making. How can I move to a new friend group, but without the drama? I want to do it just seamless help. And
And
Trek responds, and it gives some great advice, right? It also, because we believe in human connection, says, hey, go talk to a pastor or
great.
to a teacher or adult you trust. But also at the top of this list was, hey, you should pray about this and invite God into this experience with you. And so when it interacts with students, it's going to come from that kind of Christian perspective there in that. And I love it. It's great.
Yeah, that is fantastic. Okay, so speaking of Christian schools, what are you seeing as schools implement TrekAI? I guess for listeners, I guess I'm thinking something they would want to know is what are some of those key success factors? So it's major, and so many schools aren't to the point yet of letting students use AI on campus or whatever. So if we're going to go that path, what would you say are some of those really positive things or the keys that we should focus on?
yeah, I think that's a great question. Yeah, I think at the base level, and most schools I think have moved to this point where they've got policy that's built around AI and how you use generative AI, both what's appropriate use, what's inappropriate use. And Derek could go a little bit deeper on some of those things if we chose to. But more broadly, when you think about how do you begin to implement AI, one of the things I hear a lot of schools talking about is they're trying to train teachers on how to prompt. Right? How do you prompt ChatGPT? How do you prompt this? How do you prompt that?
It's the key.
And
Yeah.
it is the key. And I think, unfortunately, what happens is that whenever we focus on prompting and trying to train teachers on how to prompt, what we're doing is we're actually adding to the administrative burden than reducing
True.
from, right?
Yeah. Good point.
And how many teachers got into education because they want to become great prompters, right? And so I think that the focus probably should be less on prompting and more relying on tools that you trust that
Yeah,
have
that
done the
makes sense.
prompting on your behalf.
Yes.
Right. And that's where, we've been blessed to have Derek here, who we took one of our best teachers and got them to learn how to learn prompt engineering rather than trying to train every single teacher on what it's like to prompt. Right.
Teachers everywhere, thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
right.
Exactly. What we have found to be most successful is what many other tech platforms will do, which is a train the trainer model. Pick 4, 5, 6 of your best teachers. And so even some, and not just best teachers, but some of your tech-enabled teachers, and then even some that are part of that group that aren't maybe the most tech-enabled, but that are open to trying new things.
Yeah,
Right?
your
And
champions. Yeah.
champions, but will also give you good feedback. All right. And so you usually launch it with 3, 4, 5 teachers in that context. And we suggest doing it either by grade level or 2 or 3 core subjects. And implementing it in that way. And usually what happens when you do that is you have teachers knocking down the door once they see what these teachers have, asking, can I please use this? We did when we launched it on GAC's campus. We planned to launch it with 4, and we wound up launching it with 7 because we had teachers saying, can I please try this?
Oh,
Can I
yeah.
please?
That talk in the teacher's lounge will get you every time.
That's right.
Right.
And we see it happen time and again. The other thing that I would say, and I think this is slowly changing, is that we've actually seen better success on student uptake initially in middle school as opposed to high school. Again, this is
Interesting.
starting to change, but when generative AI first came in, what we found was that when we launched Trek on GAC's campus in August 23, middle school students were much more likely to adopt. And as we kind of did some qualitative analysis to try to understand that, what we learned was that our high school students, for the most part, had developed study habits. However bad they were, they had developed study habits, right? And AI was not part of that study habit.
Right.
Whereas middle school students had not developed their study habits yet. And
Yeah,
so
they're pretty open-minded.
That's right. And so they were beginning to incorporate
Yeah.
AI into their study
Good
habits in ways that,
observation.
yeah. And so what, we would ask our high school students, well, did you use Trek? And they'd say, no, I forgot. Right. And so that's actually part of the implementation process, is that teachers need to actively, particularly high school students, need to actively assign it so that they begin to get used to utilization on their campuses.
Great tips. Okay, so this all sounds great, but knowing you both, I know that your mental wheels are always turning. And honestly, AI isn't stopping to wait on anyone to catch up with it. So where is TrekAI heading? So we've done a lot of talking about, getting it to the teachers and implementing it. And these were great tips for, rolling it out at a school. What new things do you think, can you give us any insights? What can we expect in the coming months?
Yeah, we have some really neat things coming. So large language models are the way they're structured really bad at math. It's how the model's built.
Yes. Isn't that incredible?
Yeah, and
Just do
so
the
they seem to
math.
know, right? They seem to know everything there is to know, but they can't multiply 2, 3-digit numbers, right? And so what we've been doing is we have, and this should launch here in a little while. So within the month of August, upgrading Trek's math capabilities, STEM capabilities. So what we have happens, you ask a math question. It's really fascinating how we structured it all, but essentially we've increased our math accuracy significantly. And so where a large language model may not be good at calculations, and we've told students as we implement Trek, hey, you shouldn't really trust the calculations. Trust the steps, but not the calculations. And now we could say, hey, you could trust the calculations as well as it's walking.
That's great.
This. Yeah. It'll be able to graph, do pie charts, histograms, all the things. And so again, making this even more capable to
Sure.
help students. I don't know about you, but me in high school, I needed all the math help I could get. um,
Yeah, I'm with you
and,
on that.
right. And it was a place where my parents weren't much help to me. And so having that, building that out. We also are launching a specialized math tool that, knowing the weaknesses of large language models, we need to build a specialized tool. And so what this tool would do is it's an assessment generator for math teachers and
Excellent.
really STEM teachers, but math is kind of
Sure.
where we've started. But it'll be able to incorporate graphs into the question generation, but it'll also be able to get accurate answers and provide an accurate answer key for teachers. But also the two main areas that make math questions really hard is it'll provide questions that require critical thinking, which requires a depth of thought that's really hard But then also all the answers will be simplified. So, you're not getting x equals 2.678,
Got it. Okay.
9.
Yeah.
You're getting x equals, 2.5 or something like that.
Great.
Right. And so we're launching that as well. That'll be coming out. And then we're actually looking into some like kind of running a little beta in the next couple of months regarding grading. And so how can we structure something that still keeps the teacher at the center, but also offloads some of that burden? And so the way
Right.
we're thinking about it is like having a teacher assistant
Right.
where Trek will grade based on your requirements, but then you give feedback to Trek saying, hey, you graded the grammar really hard. They're eighth graders. Chill out a little bit, right? And so Trek will learn from the teacher and then go again. And so you can, exactly like you would coach a teacher assistant on how you want to grade, you can coach Trek on how you would want it to grade. And so those are all coming in the next couple of months. We have a whole suite of other items on the list, and I'm really excited
Excellent.
about it.
I thought you might have a few things to share with us. I'm
Yeah.
not sure when you guys sleep. Boy, I'm even more grateful you're even on the podcast. I'm not sure how you're getting all that done. Okay, so as we wrap up, because I know we've gone long, but this is so great, maybe you can comment on AI in general. So educators are kind of watching the skies, trying to figure out where this is going, where it's going to land. How soon will it land? As you look out over the next 5 years, what do you see as coming? How do you think specifically it's going to affect education? What are your thoughts?
Oh, well, when will it land? Well, I just read a biography on Walt Disney, and it's kind of like Disney World. As long as we can imagine, it'll never be done.
Oh, thank you for that.
Yeah, and so it's the same way. AI will never be done,
Right.
so long as we can imagine. And whenever you sit back and think about what makes humans different from AI and why is AI not going to take over the world, it's because AI can't be creative like humans can.
Right.
It just
Right.
cannot, and that's where humans excel. And that's, as we like to say, AI will not replace humans. Humans who use AI will replace humans who don't.
That's right.
Because we'll use it to make ourselves more effective and efficient. But with that said, one of the things that a lot of people think when they think AI, they think generative AI. And generative AI is certainly a piece, but generative AI is that. It's just a piece. And in fact, it's not even probably the biggest piece of the future. When you look to the future, I don't know if anybody's heard this phrase before, but it's agentic AI. Agentic AI is where this is headed. And when you sit back and you think about what is agentic AI and how does that compare? All right, so agentic AI is AI that acts on your behalf. And when we start to talk about reducing teacher burden, that's where we really get serious about it, is when we begin to move into an agentic AI world. So the Wall Street Journal, I think it was in May of 25, actually had an article that was talking about this, that they were talking about companies, needed to start thinking beyond large language models and thinking more broadly about how do you use agentic AI and the orchestration of agents to act on the behalf of your employees to give them more time to do what they can do more effectively and efficiently.
Right.
And so when you think about it, what it really means, and Nadella, who is the CEO of Microsoft, he made this comment. He said, software as a service as we know it is dead, which is quite a comment coming from Microsoft when you consider that's over
that's
half
pretty
their
bad.
business, right?
Yeah.
But what he's saying is that in the software as a service era, success was defined by being easy, intuitive, and rewarding. But you're designing systems that people could quickly learn, navigate, and enjoy using, right? And so all the systems that we use today are all very menu-driven, right? I click this button, it goes here. Click this button, it goes here.
Yes.
And that's all predetermined, right? But in an agentic world, it's not predetermined. The interface fades, and what matters is how the system feels when it acts on your behalf. Right, it's profound because instead of teaching people how to use software, we build systems that understand people, right? And how do we work together to serve those people? And to give you a very simplistic example of what an agentic world would look like versus an LMS, I know one of the things that teachers don't really love to do, but they have to do, is they got to go in and they got to see which students didn't submit that assignment last night. And they got to go in. Whenever you do that, it's probably a 10-minute process during your planning period. You go in, you got to click on your grade. First of all, you got to log in. You got to click on your grade book and see, all right, which students go to the assignment, which students didn't submit. All right, these 3 students didn't submit, give them a 0. Now I got to go and I got to email their parents. I got to go out of the system, find their emails, all this, and then email their parents, right? In an agentic world, what this will look like, and this is 6 months away, right, Derek?
Yeah.
In an agentic world, what this will look like is you go in and it's a chat and you simply say, Trek, which of my students didn't submit last night on this particular assessment? And it comes back and it says, hey, these 3 students didn't submit based on your school's policy, because we've ingested the policy. I've assigned them a 0. Would you like me to send an email to their parents? Yes, I would. Please do that. It's done. That, Jenny, is done in 3 seconds.
Amazing.
Not 10 minutes. And so when we talk
Right.
agentic, that's a very small scale context that we're using right there. But that's what we're talking about. And little hint, Derek was talking about some of the things that are coming over the next couple of months. LMS might be in our future. So we're building towards those things within an agentic context, and we're excited for that.
Yeah, that's incredible. Wow. It's fun to think about those things and just many, many applications to education. There's so much going on there. Great insights. Okay, so I am quite confident that as fast as all this is moving, I mean, even just that last conversation there, we had the last topic, AI obviously is going to look nothing like it does now, next year at this time. Actually, we probably, what we have now will look horribly outdated if you think about it. Derek, Josh, thank you so much for just kind of giving us this perspective of how to use AI, how we can roll this out, of this tool that you all have created. And I know it's a team effort. You all just put so much time and effort and thought into it, making something that Christian schools can use as we navigate really this incredibly, I mean, I feel like we're on a NASCAR track, even faster than that. Technology is going so fast and schools are trying to figure out, how do we navigate this? So thank you for being willing not to just talk about it and look at it and discuss it, but actually do something about it. And by the way, listeners, we're going to include a link in the show notes. I want to encourage you, go check out TrekAI. Look at this product that you've heard about and see how it might be a fit for your school. Derek and Josh have given us some great information today. And I know personally, I've worked with them a lot, that their team would be really happy to answer any questions you might have about Trek or how it would look in your environment. Derek and Josh, thank you so much for your time today and for giving us that brief behind-the-scenes tour of TrekAI and just that incredible tool that you all have built out, and specifically for Christian schools, which just means so much to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny.
Thank you. Really did enjoy it.
Listeners, I appreciate you also taking the time to be with us today. Remember to go to teachereditionpodcast.com to submit your questions for upcoming episodes. Of course, be sure to subscribe to the podcast and follow us on social media. Now it's time to get back to your day, but it's not just any day. Every day in the classroom is your day to impact and inspire through God's power and through His grace working in you. Now, go do what God has called you to do.